Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Horror Inside. Um, I'm with Brandi, as usual, and we have another fun little podcast review of a certain horror series. We've only really done the Carrie one so far, and the Halloween, but Brandi, do you want to let them know what we're going to talk about?
Sure. So today we're talking about Scream. Ooh, everybody should be aware of this classic
Yes.
series, even
Classic and
though, yeah,
game-changing for the
yeah,
genre.
exactly. And even though I myself had never seen the sequels, like as per usual, just the first one. So Dylan had to introduce me to them,
All right,
just like the Halloween. So it'll be
which is
interesting to go through and
Yeah,
talk
which
about them.
is just as fun as showing you the Halloween sequels because I know what you like,
Yeah.
what you don't like, and I feel like it's safe to say before we jump into the first one that you were pleasantly surprised overall.
Yeah, it was just like with I told you, just like with Halloween, because you always and even though there was definitely some bumps in the in the road with the Halloween series, like it
Yeah,
wasn't completely flawless, but
yeah.
overall they like I was surprised that you know most most of them were actually really really good, and shout out Donald Pleasance always. Anyway, but yeah, I was really surprised with all four of the Scream, and I'm really glad, and we'll go more on about this as we talk about all the movies, but I am really glad that they just stuck to the four movies. I know they have some type of show
Yes.
that's out now or coming out or something, but I think,
That
in
doesn't
terms
count.
of the movies,
I don't
exactly.
count that.
In terms of like, the movies themselves, like they didn't go on and have, Scream 10, because like you would expect that because it was very popular, it did really well, but they were, I think, because there's only four of them, they were consistent, they were all good. So yeah,
Mm.
I'm excited to talk about them.
Yes, and consistent is a good word because
Yeah,
it's probably the only, maybe one of the only, if not the only horror franchise that has that consistency with so many different things. But we'll
exactly.
talk about that more as we get through the sequels. But if you just
Okay.
want to jump into the original Scream, we can talk about that. And I guess the
Yes.
perfect place to start with that is the, just like the franchise is iconic, the opening Drew Barrymore
Oh
scene.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. And obviously, and we do have to say that, throughout watching, the first two Screams, we did kind of think back to Scary Movie, which I guess is kind of like, oh,
You
Scary
can't
Movie
help
ruined
it.
Scream, but it's yeah, it's just like I just kept thinking of certain things and it was funny. But yeah, no, the actual opening of Scream though is so iconic and so good, and it's been parodied obviously so many times, obviously with Scary Movie, but just
Yes.
like that's like the end all be all opening of any like slasher movie, I think. I think it's awesome.
And, we're obviously not the first people to say this, but you have to say it when you're talking about this scene and all
Hmm.
that. How brilliant it was, I believe, on Drew Barrymore's part to decide to take that role because she was the biggest actor at that point. I think
Oh
she was
yeah.
off with Sydney, and she, read the script and said, "Actually, I want to do this because I think this would be more interesting," which is completely right because, she was the bigger star.
Didn't
Uh,
expect her, yeah,
yeah,
to get killed right away. Yeah, that's actually like that's awesome. I didn't know I mean, I think you probably did tell me that as we were watching
yeah.
it, but that's I thought like they asked her because they thought it was a good idea, but for her as an actress to be like, "No, this would be cool." That's really awesome. And it
Mhm.
was shocking, obviously. I'm sure when people saw that back then they were like, "What? It's Drew Barrymore. What the hell, man?" But um
I know,
yeah,
and
I
sometimes you
love
forget when you just think about like the iconic status of that scene and everything.
yeah.
Sometimes I forget just how like brutal that scene is.
Yeah.
Like just I'm just thinking of her, getting dragged away with the phone and then she's tied to
Oh
the
yeah.
tree. She's
Yeah.
stabbed in the heart and like when she's like around the corner from the house as her parents are going in the front door and they're like right there.
Oh
But
yeah.
she can't get their attention fast enough. That's
Oh, I
very
know.
scary and brutal.
Yeah.
And this is also, and it shows you again back to consistency. All the movies are mostly written by the same guy. I
Right.
believe the third movie is written by somebody else, but uh, it was only a horror movie fan like him would be able to do this when Ghostface is doing the whole uh, game with her name's Casey, and
Mhm.
her boyfriend's outside, and he asks her the questions and things.
Oh yeah.
And it's always a question that you just immediately think otherwise. And I believe when we were watching it, you did too. And he asks her who named the killer in Friday the 13th. And she said Jason. She's seen
Oh
that movie
yeah.
20 goddamn times, she says.
Yeah.
And even you were like, what? But that's right. But that is a question that can easily get you because you don't literally think of
Of
the
Jason.
first movie. You just think
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Jason because he's so synonymous. So that was a clever question to trick somebody, even a horror fan like I guess she was supposed to be.
Yeah, I would have failed that and died or got my boyfriend killed or something because like I really was like, oh, I got this, horror trivia. I'm good at that. And then I was like, what? It like really threw me off. I mean, it does make sense because Jason's mom is the killer in the first one, but
Right, that's being very
yeah, so
specific.
it's like a trick question.
Yes. Um, but no, yeah, let's see. Just that scene in general is great, and I suppose
Yeah,
as we go through, there are always going to be. You mentioned Scary Movie. We could mention the things that popped into our head as we were watching
I
certain
know.
parts of the first two. But I always just remember in Scary Movie. I think it's Scary Movie. It's Carmen Electra in that role.
Oh yeah.
And that scene, she like with the popcorn on the stove, it keeps cutting back to it, and it's just bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Like comical. It's like the size of like
Yeah.
a hot air balloon by the end or something.
Yeah, and when she's running from him in Scary Movie, like doesn't
It's
she? It's like slow motion,
slow
and she's running
motion.
through the sprinkler. Yeah,
She's like in her underwear.
yeah, I love it. Oh my God.
Yeah. But there's gonna be a few instances of that once we get to certain scenes,
Yeah,
but can't help
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Can't help it. I don't think it doesn't lessen anything really in these films. It's just
Yeah,
kind of a
not
fun
I.
side.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely don't think so. At first, I was like, oh my God, throughout these movies, is it gonna be ruined because it's a scary movie? But honestly, no. It kind of adds more to the whole legacy, I guess, of the
Yeah.
movies. So
Yeah. Um, well, then I guess if you want to move off of that scene, I believe the very next character that's introduced is Sydney,
right.
and we can talk a little bit about her in this movie.
Yes.
It definitely becomes more. It's continued as the sequels go on, but I know I said this before, and I know you agree with me that even in this film alone, but as the sequels go on, especially, she becomes one of the smartest, like
Final
fiercest
girl.
final
Yeah.
girls. Like she's smart, and that's why she survives. And these movies are
Yeah.
usually written smart too.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I remember you and I had like a discussion or whatever on Twitter one time about like how, you know, some people like to say that the horror genre sexualizes women and blah blah blah, but I honestly think
Yeah,
that some of the, strongest females to be depicted on screen are always like females, and I can name like literally five of them right now if you
I know.
really want me to. But I
I,
think yeah, I think you and
I
I gave
can't.
examples or whatever on there
Yeah,
too.
I know it was. I can't remember what tweet I saw that made me go off on that, but it was somebody saying something stupid like that, like it exploits women, and then
Yeah,
I
yeah.
literally reply or made my own tweet and like put like a few tweets, like almost 20 different final girls that are awesome,
Yeah.
and Sid's in there, of course. And then I know you replied back and said something like that's stupid and women own the horror genre, and
Yeah,
it's true. People that make claims like that are not fans of the genre, so they don't know what they're talking about. Not to say that some
exactly.
movies can't be exploitative,
Right,
but
I agree. And I think mainly
slashers in
when
general with the final girl that's not the case.
I think most people that say that are referencing like the cheesy B movie slashers that came out like, throughout
Right,
the 80s and stuff like that. So, and I mean, I'm sure like you said there are times where that's happened. I mean, it's
right.
Hollywood, that shit happens a lot, but I personally think all the horror movies that I love, almost every single one of them, the lead is a female that survives in the end. I mean, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Pretty
Scream now,
much.
Halloween, like all of them.
I could only think of
Nightmare.
Child's Play as an example of a non-female lead, but even then you have Karen and Kyle and
Yeah, and it does introduce some really awesome female characters. I mean, I fucking love Jennifer Tilly. She doesn't really count because she's like villainous, but she's great. Shout out to her. And also, just real quick, shout out to Heidi Anderson because she liked my tweet about the females like owning the horror genre. So I think,
yeah,
at least from what she read of our conversation, she agrees with us. So that's awesome. Heidi,
yeah.
you're awesome. Because she also plays a strong, badass female,
Hmm.
horror lead. So that's awesome. Shout
Yeah.
out Jill Valentine. Anyway, anyway, back to Sydney though, and I always liked Nev Campbell. I've honestly only ever seen her in The Craft, but I love that movie so much. anybody listening to this, if you've never seen The Craft, it's fucking awesome. It's sort of horrorish, but I don't know, it's awesome. Go watch it.
It,
But
it could be something we could, in the future maybe do.
I know I definitely would love to show you it because you said you've never seen it or you saw it once a
I
long
saw it
time.
once.
Yeah, it's really really good. It has some really really good performances and it features an actor we'll probably end up talking about very shortly because he's
Yeah.
also in Scream. Skeet Aldrich. I can never say his last name right. Aldrich or
Ulrich.
Ridge? Aldrich. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it kind of like has him in it as well, so it's kind of like reuniting. Actually, I don't even know what came out first. I don't know if the first Scream came out first or The Craft. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, either way, they're both in it, so it's pretty cool to see them both act together again, even though they don't have that many scenes together in The Craft. But
Yeah.
so I always liked Neve Campbell because I really liked her in that. She was actually there's like 4 main character girls in The Craft. It's like a bunch of Wiccan, witches, teenage witches type thing, and she was always my favorite one in that. I was like, oh my god, she's so pretty, and she had like this tragic story, and I just think she's a really good actress.
She really is.
So,
We said a couple times watching the movies that I was always surprised that she didn't go on to be bigger because she is really good
yeah,
in these movies and
exactly. I'm surprised she never did any more horror too because she's so good as the like Jamie Lee Curtis obviously went off and did other horror movies after Halloween, so I find it weird that never really happened with her because I think she's really really good and she plays the final girl and she's just so like obviously there had been ones before her that were smart. We always talk about Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween and we could talk about oh god what's her name Heather Langenkamp, is that how you say it? Langenkamp, yeah. She's great too, and it doesn't get enough love, but I really love the original. I like the remake too, but the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the final girl in that, I think her name's is her name Sally? Yeah,
Sally.
She's pretty badass. So.
Well, if you're mentioning one that doesn't get a lot of love, I always like to throw this in. We watched it once too, but Kirsty Cotton from Hellraiser is very good, and she's very well. We can talk about that when we ever get to those sequels. She's very different. But as Sidney, I always thought she stood apart from even most of them because because I think the writing in most of the Scream movies is sharper and smarter. Yeah. And it's not just a dumb slasher movie, which Nightmare isn't, but some of the sequels are and things like that. But I always thought Sidney, because of that, came across a lot more dynamic and like a fully realized character that some of the other ones, not the ones we mentioned, but some other ones. And I think on that, even a reason why that's the case is I love her tragic backstory with her mom, and her mom was killed.
That definitely gives her so much more depth, and I think it makes the strength of the character because it's like, wow, she actually has something that she's sort of fighting, not really for, but like there's just more reason for her to want to fight this horrible evil that's
And throughout the first movie, her whole thing is she is learning things that may be true about her mother that she never knew, and
right.
It hurts her, and like I just think of the scene in the bathroom that's one of the only very 90s written scenes where she's in the bathroom stall and there's like 2 girls come in, like a cheerleader and another girl that look like they're in like fucking I don't know, some like teen comedy or something, and they're just completely unrealistic, and you're talking about how her mom was a slut and everything. She was great in that scene, just her reactions in the bathroom. But I always liked that she had that piece of backstory that we learned through the sequels, kind of are the reasoning for all the sequels pretty much too.
That's true. Yeah, no, I do like that too, because even some of the characters that you and I already mentioned, and I'm not, shading any of the final girls because I fucking love all of them, but even them, not that they're one note, like they end up, being so strong and having these layers, but I think she's the only one that has a really, really like tragic backstory right off the bat. Like with Laurie in Halloween, it's like she's just kind of, and again, no shade because I love her, but she's just like a babysitter that she's high school.
Yeah, there's not more layers to her that
right, like a backstory.
She got more layers in the sequels.
Yeah, as it went on, exactly. Which is fine, but I don't know. I think giving Sidney this dramatic, dark backstory right off the bat, because I grew up watching the first Scream, as I always do with the first movie, but I honestly didn't remember a lot of that part of it, which
Hmm.
is weird because that's the whole, the whole climax and everything ends up
I know.
leading back to that. But I was just like, wait, her mom died, and then I'm like, oh
I know. There
wow.
was a. I just have to say there was just a funny moment while we were watching it, and I could tell that you didn't remember that part of it because like it showed her picture of her mom on TV,
Mhm.
because it was the 1 year anniversary, and then it showed a picture of her and her mom, like a picture next to Sydney's couch, and you were like, wait, what? Why does she have a picture of that woman that was just on TV?
Yeah, I was like so confused. And that's like weird because again, I maybe because it's just literally been years and years and years since
Yeah.
I actually did watch it, but I've seen it like it wasn't just one of those ones I just watched once. Like I definitely have seen it a couple times and things started to slowly come back to me as I watched it. In particular, I'll talk about it more when we get to their characters, but I fucking love at the end when he's like, you know what line I'm gonna say? You hit me with the
My
phone.
brother's favorite line too.
Yeah, all I had to do was text my sister that, and she was like, "Oh my god, I love that movie." It was so funny. We always used to say that, and I forgot about it, and when it came on, oh my god, I love
That's
him
that.
too as an actor.
That's definitely probably one of his most quotable lines. But then I always
It
also
is.
love. He's like starting to cry. My mom and dad are gonna
They're
be
gonna be
so mad at me.
yeah, and didn't he
I think they
improvise
were
both of
both
those?
in. Yeah,
I love it. What's his name again? The actor's name? Because
Matthew Lillard.
yes, I absolutely love him. I know it's gonna sound childish, but I loved the Scooby Doo movie, and
Oh,
I
I do
loved him
too.
as Shaggy. He was awesome. I
Hey,
just
it's not childish. One of my favorite horror movies ever is Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. So
see,
take
there we go.
that.
Oh yeah, I forgot you do like the movies too, because I'm always like, oh,
Yeah,
but no, he's great. If you want, I don't know if who you want to go on next, but I guess since we already brought him up, I really do like him.
yeah.
He's like super, and it's weird because when I think of him, I automatically think of Shaggy and like the goofy, funny, but then you see him in Scream and he's like so fucking psychotic. It's
Have
just like
a.
wow, very versatile actor.
I know, and he was a great comic. There's comedy in these movies too.
Exactly.
I also hate. I said this before. When some websites you look up Scream and comedy is sometimes the first genre list, and it's like cut it out. They're a satire. Doesn't mean they're a straight up comedy. But
Right.
on
Should be
him,
horror and mystery, if anything.
yeah, on him, yeah, he's a good comic relief. And
Yeah.
I have a fun little story about him. At the convention I usually go to every year,
Was he there?
there was one year that him and Skeet Ulrich were there
Oh,
together, and they
that's
did like a
awesome.
panel, whatever. I didn't really meet them. My friends did, but I went to the panel that they were at, and Matthew Lillard was very lively and very in the crowd, and you could tell he. It was like the end of the night. It was Saturday. You could tell he had some drinks.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd have a beer with him. That'd be great. Wow, I didn't know they actually like did cons and were actually like,
Yeah,
reunited together. That's really, really cool. That'd be cool if they could get like, Nev Campbell in on it or whatever. But
I know she does some. She does some. I wish
oh,
she'd do more
she's
closer to us. Like
she's done cons?
I've
That's
seen
awesome.
she's done like in London and places so far away, but I'm sure she's done some in America. Um,
Mm.
but I know he's great.
Yeah, he's definitely my favorite part of like the comic relief. And I like that the movie has enough comic relief in it where it's not over the top and it turns cheesy, but it's just enough where it's like, okay, this is like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I just love it. And his lines in particular, especially at the end, are really, really great. Um,
Mm.
but I guess since we're talking about him, do you want to talk about Skeet Ulrich for a
Yeah,
little bit and his character?
we can
Yeah,
go to Billy. It's a natural
Billy, yeah.
transition. Yeah, he's great. And I like how because all the movies do this. They give you they make so many characters seem suspicious. And
Yeah.
I know that was like got to be a little. You were guessing so much as we watched the movies because they make everybody suspicious at different
I
times. It
know.
was really fun to see, your mind work as they kept popping up. But with him,
Well,
I
I
liked
because
that
I
they,
like that consistency too. That it's always a mystery
yeah,
plot in these movies. It's not just horror, stabbing, slashy stuff. It's like actual like you have to really like be like, can't trust anybody in this fucking cast. But
but thinking back on the first movie and Billy, I do think that I kind of like that he was like the prime suspect the whole movie, and it was Sidney
and it
struggling with whether or not she could trust him, and the
right.
fact that it wasn't obvious. It was actually really cool that it was him, and
Yeah,
then
I
the
remember being
reasoning.
shocked by that when I did
Yeah,
first see the movie, like initially or whatever. I was just like, oh my God, what is her boyfriend? But he's so cute. 'Cause but I mean, yeah, no, that was a big like that. The reveal in all of them is just like I was saying this when we were watching the last one the other day. I was like, you almost just want to get to the end, like skip the whole movie and get to the end just so you can see, and you can be like, because it's like, it's so interesting and it keeps your attention the entire time, but it's also so frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to fucking know, but
I know.
you know.
I know. I always feel it. Well, I'm sure I felt like that. I don't remember. I don't have any memory of these movies being a mystery to me because I don't remember the first time I saw them.
I know that's actually crazy.
So I guess I never had that. But
Right.
what really mostly keeps me invested amidst all of that guessing is the very strong main three characters, and in the first two, also Randy.
Oh, I love him. Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't move off of Billy without talking about that. His name's Billy Loomis.
Oh yeah. Love that nod. There's a lot of those sort of things like sprinkled throughout the three movies. Like even, guest appearance like Linda Blair when she plays like she's a reporter or something in it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like he knew what he was doing was great.
Also on Billy, I just thought it was so pretty much every time with Sidney, they're always going after her, and it's never like she slighted somebody or did something to piss somebody off. It's like why, like with Billy, it's because he did it. He explained because Sidney's mom had an affair with his father, and then his father made his father abandon him, and
right.
And then he takes that out on Sidney. I
don't. Yeah, he's a little on the psychotic side as well.
Right.
And
I just feel bad for her because it's always she's getting dogpiled on this whole franchise.
I know, just because of her fucking mom. Oh my God.
I know, that slutbag whore.
I know, right? Oh.
What does Matthew Lillard say too? And let's face it, Sid, your mother.
Yeah. But...
No, Billy said like she was trancing around town like she was Sharon Stone, and Stu says, let's face it, Sid, your mother was no Sharon Stone.
I do love him. He's such an asshole, but he just can't help but like him.
I know.
Like Billy's like the straight up psychotic one that you're like, oh, what an asshole, like just die, motherfucker. But like with what's his name? Stu? Is that his name in the movie? Yeah. There's just something like kind of like
there was even another kind of funny line that I also think he improvised when he tackles Sidney at the end, and he's like is on top of her, and he just says, "I always had a thing for you, Sid." I think that was completely.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, he's good
too.
at that.
I know. But no, we'll talk about the other Ghostface in the sequels, obviously, but I think they definitely set like the bar. There's nobody for me that was more that I enjoyed watching more as the killers.
I agree.
A lot of them I do like too, but
yeah,
they probably had the best dynamic of any of the pairs of killers.
Yes, I agree.
Well, we could move on to. There's certain moments I don't want to forget to talk about that, but we always go character by character, which I like because. I kind of. Do you want to move on to Gale? She has also some, because we were just talking about sort of the end of some things in the end of this movie. She also has some pretty awesome moments when she gets the gun and she's aiming it at Stu and Billy, and she's gonna shoot them, but then she forgets that the safety's on. It's like, oh, come on.
Oh,
Gale.
yeah.
I guess she knows nothing about guns, otherwise she would have checked, but it's like, that could have been awesome if she just ended the movie there, but it was more appropriate that Sidney did that, but
right.
But now, Gale, I know I was going to ask you this at some point, but because this franchise is such a character-driven franchise with the three leads, I was going to ask you, who's like your favorite character of the franchise? For me, and we're on Gale, she with 100% is my favorite character of the franchise.
I knew it.
I knew you would know that. Because you know the kind of characters I like. It's probably partly Courtney Cox, but partly just she comes off as such an awful person, and she's just, in it for her own self-gain.
Yeah, especially in the first one. Like, she obviously grows throughout the series, but that's the first movie. And even throughout the first movie, she grows a little bit, but, like, she's such a bitch in that one.
Like, when it's such a parodied scene also at this point, but when Sidney punches her outside the police station.
Yeah.
But she's just so insensitive when Sidney's asking her about, how's the book? Because it's a book about her mom getting killed and everything that happened then.
Right.
she's like she has no sensitivity, and she's just like, I'll send you a copy, all happily. And it's like that's a book you wrote about her
Her
mom's death.
mom,
I don't think
yeah,
she wants to read it.
I know, right?
And
Like
then she gets
boy.
the punch she deserves, and she gets the punch in Scream 2 as well, so that's nice.
Yeah, so at least she gets, what she
Yeah.
deserves. So I don't know. The weird thing is
And
too,
I loved how she
I
grew throughout the
grew,
series
yes,
too.
yeah, especially with her relationship with Dewey. I love that
Right.
whole thing
Hmm.
because he kind of like I feel like brings her down from her,
Her
fucking high
ego.
horse. Yeah, her
Yeah.
ego and her high horse because he's a really good character too. So I guess I'll focus more on her right now, and then we'll talk about him. But I do
Yeah.
love their dynamic and their relationship. And you're probably going to be surprised because I feel like maybe going into this, since you obviously had seen all the movies and that's your favorite character, and you know
Mhm.
me so well and the
Yeah.
characters I like and dislike and stuff, you probably thought I would hate her. I don't know. Maybe you were like, oh, well, she's good enough, or even Brandi will like her. But I actually really do like her character,
Right.
and I don't
I don't
know.
know. It's weird. I think because she's also such a well-rounded character. If we're just thinking of the first movie, because it's the only one you had
Yeah,
seen. And I know the kind of characters that you hate, but for some reason that
yeah.
was never anything that crossed my mind. I guess because I like her so much, I just like, yeah, Brandy probably get. And she also has her own comedy and the comic reliefness in the film too.
Right.
I felt like you also had to get a kick out of like with her cameraman, and she's so mean to him. And
I.
there's one scene in particular where they're late getting to the scene or whatever, and she's like, Jesus, get the camera. My name's not Jesus.
Oh
And
yeah.
then, and then when he gets the camera to her first, she's like, I know that you're about 50 pounds overweight.
Yeah. So
He's awful.
mean. And that's Bill in Last of Us.
It
Shout
is,
out Bill.
yeah.
That's awesome. When you said that, I just could not stop seeing Bill after that. It was awesome. But
I know. But no, if you want to continue on what you were saying.
yeah, like I honestly I'm surprised you're not surprised because I am actually
Yeah,
surprised that I liked her so much because I usually don't like those type of just and I but she was so layered like you said. I think that's what made it like if she
yeah,
was just a bitch and she was just defined as being this, reporter bitch, which she totally gets the annoying reporter thing down too because you
right.
always see how they,
I think it
act like
goes
that.
to her, probably a big part of that probably goes to Courtney Cox and how she portrayed her.
That's what I was
Um,
gonna say. If it was cast, maybe if somebody else was in the role, it wouldn't have worked as well, and she may have just came off as this one note bitch. But
yeah,
first of all, I like Courtney Cox anyway. I always thought she was really pretty. We will talk about her awful hair when we get to the third movie. But
that's gonna be its own segment.
yeah, it's insane. But no, I really, really like her. I think it's a combination of the layers. I love characters that are layered. I hate when they're just a bitch or they're just a strong female because they just come off as like they have to have vulnerability, they have to have layers, and she has like a lot of that
Yeah,
plus the comedy and the bitchy snarky comments that I just absolutely like. She's very witty and quick, and it's like, damn, I kind of envy that. I wish I was like she's
I
just
know.
like I really like her. She actually may be my favorite, but I'm not gonna reveal my favorites till the end.
Okay.
Like movies
Um,
and characters.
yes. Um, but I think on like some of her layers, I always thought it was very interesting that you could think both ways because part of her character, one of those layers, is Dewey and her relationship with Dewey. And in
Yes.
this one, I like that you can like when she goes off with him at the end at the party and they're walking down and checking things out, and then they find Sydney's father's car. That whole thing, and then when they kiss, I like in this movie because you don't know her too well,
Right.
um, and how she acts other times in the movies. I like that you can sort of see both sides and think like, wow, so does she like when they kiss, is she actually falling for Dewey, or at this point
Exactly.
is she just
Yeah.
pretending to
Yeah.
get the story?
Yeah, that was my whole mindset at first. I was just like, man, this bitch, like, this bitch, is just using him for her own gain because that's what she. And I feel like at first, from my opinion and watching the movies, I think at first that obviously was her
Yeah, I'm
initial
sure
thing,
that
but
was her
then,
whole
yeah,
motivation
but then
going
she was
in.
like, oh, he's actually like, yeah, I do. I love their whole relationship. I think that them being in every single one of them and being together as like really, really like makes
Galen,
again, the
yeah,
consistency is like
Galen Dewey.
amazing in the movie. Yeah.
I was I was watching I heard this from somewhere, but it's funny. Like we've talked sometimes about like ships in Resident Evil. I don't really care about those too much, except for like Leon and Ada. But they have
Right.
their own combined names. And somebody said, "Oh, is their ship Gale and Dewey? Is their ship named Gooey?"
I love that. That's actually good. uh, that's great. I would have, or I guess the other one would just be Dale, which is stupid. So yeah, we're gonna
It's
go
gotta
with
be
Gooey.
Gooey.
Yeah,
Gooey.
it's gotta be Gooey. I love that.
Um,
I think the
but
fact that they were married too in real life. I
yeah,
don't know which
I think they got
one
married
for the.
Scream 3.
Okay, I think that definitely helps with their. I mean, they are. I think they already had good chemistry anyway, but that
Yeah,
probably helped. And that's just cute that they met on the set of
I
Scream and
know.
then they just fell for each other. It's adorable, even though they're not married anymore.
I know.
But
But yeah, just finishing up with Gale. She is my favorite character of the series, and um, I think she's great in every movie, but she's hands down the best in this movie.
the first one.
Yes, and fun fact, and I have a few of those as we go through, so I want to try to remember them. Because she's most well known for Friends, and she had been doing that for a few years when Scream came out, and
Right.
she really wanted to do something different, so she really fought to be Gale because they didn't even want to see her because they saw her as her Friends character.
Oh my God, I like the way
So,
studios do that.
but I like that ultimately they did go with her.
Yeah,
'Cause
and
I
she
could,
proved them wrong, obviously, 'cause she's like amazing in the role, and she has all those layers.
I know, and
I
yeah, we
love it.
think about like we always Resident Evil is the focus of this channel, so it always comes up every single podcast. But
Right.
with like actors and certain characters in the franchise that we can't separate,
Yeah,
I feel like I couldn't see anybody besides Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette in those three roles.
I agree. That's why I'm so glad it was never remade, at least not as of this date we're making this podcast. That'll probably be one of the
Yeah,
next ones announced. I hope not, but
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, do you want to move on to Dewey?
Yes,
Do
he's awesome too.
he is he is probably not a good thing, not a good way to go into his character, but scary movie. I know it's like hard to separate him from. It's not hard to separate him but you can't help but not think of
Think of
Doofy.
it. Well, Doofy is
I
those are
even
the
watched
names,
a,
and yeah.
I even watched an interview with David Arquette a while ago where like they like showed him he like watched like a clip from Scream
He
and then
did
the
he
interviewer asked him like, "Oh, do people just come around and like say Dewey, Dewey?" And he's like, "No, actually I get Doofy."
no, that's hilarious. You have to send me that. If you actually can find that, send me that because that's
Yeah, he gets
hilarious.
Doofy
So
more than Dewey.
he's obviously, I'm sure all the people that were involved in Scream are aware of Scary Movie and their characters. Like
Yeah.
that's so great. Oh my God.
Oh, another fun fact that I told you is Scream. The original title was going to be Scary Movie,
I know that's so weird. Oh my God.
but I
That
guess they were the
is
same.
funny.
They actually were the same studio, so probably like,
Okay,
"Hey, we had
makes
this
sense.
name lying around. You use it." Um,
And then they ended up being just parodied for Scary Movie. So it works out perfectly.
I
I
know.
think Scream's a better movie anyway. Just I don't know. I like
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely. But I'll wrap up on that thing. And even in that interview too, he said, he said he gets doofy, and then he said, and I don't have sex with vacuum cleaners. 'Cause that's what Doofy does in the movie, I guess.
Oh my God.
But
Does he seem like he like took it more as like a joke or that he
he
was
was
kind of like,
joking.
oh,
No,
okay, good. Like he's not pissed off
he has a
about
sense
it.
of humor, and I
Okay,
think
good.
Dewey does too. I like Dewey, and that's again another reason why I think he works so well with Gale is they're matched well together. She's very hard, and he's very light and innocent, and
Yeah. He's like very
he
pure of heart and just like very caring, and she's like so cold and like the
a
opposite. So
perfect
I think they
example.
balance each other out.
They do a perfect example of that. I remember the scene with the sheriff in the first movie when the sheriff is there. They're having a conversation about the killer and I guess the party maybe, and the
Hmm.
sheriff is smoking a cigarette. And every time the sheriff takes a drag of his cigarette, Dewey is eating his ice cream like a little boy.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That's so cute. I remember while we were watching it, you actually pointed that out. You're like, I just love like the dynamic here of like he's sitting there smoking on a cigarette and he's just eating his ice cream. I was like, that is so cute. Yeah, I love that. That like just like defines his whole character. So cute. And I do love. I talked about this actually. I think again when we were watching Scream 4. I love his relationship with Sydney. I love that they like always stayed close, and he kind of seemed like sort of like a father figure to her. I know that her best friend was like
His
his sister.
sister,
So yeah,
Ada.
I don't think he's that much supposed to be that much older than her, but obviously
Yeah,
I don't know. He just comes off as like a father figure to her, even though she does have a dad. But I don't know. I
yeah.
just love their relationship and how much
I
he seems like he cares about her.
yeah, I liked that continued in the sequels too. Um, for me, I always kind of saw them as like you know siblings almost in a way.
Yeah, he
Uh,
could work like that too. Like I guess because he's just he comes off as the older, protective, like
Yeah.
parental thing, but I guess it could also be like a sibling thing, especially because she was really good friends with his sister. I don't know. I just love it. I love every time they first see each other in the movies, and they're always like, Dewey, Sidney, and they hug each
Yeah.
other. It's so cute. I love it.
I know. Um, and he tries so hard in this movie to like be a good cop,
I
and it
know.
just doesn't really work out for him.
I know.
I love when he goes into the house at the end, and Halloween is still playing on the TV, and he's like,
Oh yeah.
you know, surveying the area and whatever, and the Halloween theme is still playing in the background, and it actually works. And then he hears like Jamie Lee Curtis scream on the TV, and it scares
Oh,
him.
I love that. I could just talk about that whole thing.
Sequence.
Yeah, like I just love that that's referenced heavily. I mean, a lot of horror movies are referenced in this movie, but I just
Yeah.
love
Well,
that in
Halloween,
particular.
and they've said that was, you know,
The
the
inspiration.
biggest inspiration for Scream.
That's awesome.
I guess I'd have more to talk about him in the sequels because it is fun to see all of the characters sort of change as the sequels go on.
Right. They
But
grow with the franchise. See, that's the whole reason why movie makers should be more consistent if they're gonna make a long running series, because it helps a lot to see the characters' growth, and it keeps people more invested. I feel like with the Fridays and the fucking Nightmares, and even a little bit probably with Halloween after a certain point, they were all obviously just made for money.
mhm.
Not to say the Scream ones weren't too. I mean, obviously they were popular, they brought in money, but I don't know. The
Right.
consistency and the story and everything.
I think there was care and like thought and love put
Yeah.
into every Scream movie as opposed to like some of those other franchises, some sequels, it was just like, okay, whatever.
Jason's in space now.
Yeah.
They just like shat out these ideas.
Busta Rhymes
just,
is
like,
here.
Yeah, yeah. With Tyra Banks. Like, it's great. I don't know. I definitely like there was no point in any of the Scream movies where I was like, okay, where's the rapper gonna show up? Where's the cheesiness? Like they were all really
Yeah.
consistent and really, really, I love that. I don't know why more series can't. And I again love the fact that there's only four. That's a decent. I mean, they probably could have stopped honestly at three and had like a trilogy thing, but having the fourth one, and we have to talk about what we were talking about, how they're so self-aware too, is what I love about them. Like they're so self-aware of the cliches of the horror. I mean, they point them out themselves. Like you got to be a virgin in order to survive. You can't,
Mhm.
have sex. You can't smoke weed. Like
But then
I
it
love
even
all
flips it
that.
on its head. The movie explicitly presents that rule to you about being a virgin, and
Yeah.
it cuts as Sydney is, I guess, losing her virginity
Oh yeah,
upstairs, and she still
yeah.
survives. So that rule sort of was played on its head.
I know. I love
You were
that.
just told, oh no, she's gonna get killed, and then she doesn't.
Well, and then I love in the sequel they talk about sequel. They kind of talk about the cliches of sequels, and then they talk about trilogies in the third one, and then I guess the fourth one you said is more like they talk about like the
Remake
possibility of
horror
remakes.
remakes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I love that too. So I guess since we're talking about this sort of thing, we should talk about Randy. If that's his name, right? He's awesome.
Yeah.
Because he is one of my favorite minor characters, and I was actually really fucking pissed when he died. He died
Mm.
in the second one.
The second one,
Yeah, and
and
it
he has a
was
cameo in the third one.
yeah, because he recorded that. Yeah, I remember that. Wait, but how? Oh, this is awful. Okay, guys, I just want to establish for anybody listening that we kind of spread these movies out. We've watched them over the last, like, what would you say, like 2 months,
Couple
maybe?
weeks, well, maybe
Would
a
you say?
month,
Yeah,
month and
maybe it
a
wasn't
half.
that long. Maybe I forget things easily. But so, just remind me again. How did Randy? Oh, did Randy die when he went up to that van to see, like, when they were
Yeah.
on that campus? Yeah.
If you
Okay. Yeah.
wanna, yeah, if you wanna move into Scream 2, we can start with that.
Yeah.
Because I think Scream 1 is a classic. I love it. I don't think,
Yes, I agree.
and like I said, it's a game changer.
Gotta
It
talk about
really,
Ghostface voice. How awesome that is, and I'm glad that was consistent throughout
it
all
was
the movies
always
too.
consistent,
Yeah.
and it's cool.
Very creepy.
He was brought in to be in the new season of the stupid Scream show. That was a cool touch.
Yeah, at least they did that.
But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's Roger Jackson is his name. Um,
Isn't he somebody else that you and I know
in The
from
Walking
something?
Dead, he's Chuck.
Oh yeah, that's so random, but that's cool.
Yeah, he's a
Very.
voice actor too. But yeah,
Oh
he's that voice along with the mask just makes Ghostface
yes,
so iconic
I
and
agree.
can stand shoulder to shoulder with the Michaels and the Freddys and the Jasons.
I completely agree.
And he has the extra added unique thing that he's a human being. There's nothing supernatural
I was
about him.
gonna say, yeah. Remember when you said that the reason why he kind of does stand out on his own is he doesn't have any type of supernatural thing about him. I mean, obviously, like, Michael gets shot like 5 or 6 times by Loomis at the end of Halloween, and he's just somehow still, he's obviously got something. And then there's Jason, who's, dead and comes back to life, and
He becomes
obviously
like a
Freddy's all fucked up.
zombie. He's basically a zombie by a certain
Yeah.
sequel.
And they're all great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like downplaying any, because obviously you
No,
and I
but
are
it's
huge
nice
fans
that
of all these franchises. But
it's
yeah,
nice
it's
that there
different.
is the one that is completely human and motivated
psychotic,
in
yeah.
that. Yeah, and
Because that means it could really happen, which makes the
that.
Scream movies even scarier, because it could just be some psychotic.
And
Well,
I
it's
love
always
that,
different killers, but
and maybe it did help because there were only 4, but I love that the movies never got so dumb that, like, if they had done, like, if they had went as long as the Stab movies did, like Stab
oh
7,
yeah.
maybe there would have been a sequel that would have introduced something like that, and I would have hated that.
Oh, you mean like something supernatural with
yeah, if
Ghostface?
they added
Yeah.
something like that in a
Yeah,
sequel
like they
or
take his
something.
mask off and there's just nothing there. He's
Like
just
there was
always...
it was also the joke in Scream 4 when they were talking about the Stab movies that one of the girls was like, that Stab 5 is by far the worst, because it has time travel and shit.
Oh yeah,
Commentary on how horror
how they get
sequels can fall to
ridiculous.
shit.
I feel like that was almost sort of like a nudge to I don't know what it's I think it's called. Is it Jason X or whatever, the one where he goes
Jason
to
X
space?
is in space. See, yeah, that's why I said that when we were watching the movie. I said I think that it would have been more on point if she had said space, because there's so many franchises that just give up and just, okay, let's go to space. Halloween almost did that.
Oh my god, really?
But the time travel thing makes it a goofier line. It's just like, I kind of want to see Stab 5. See what it's about. Like
Halloween did the stupid cult thing, which I absolutely did not like. So
Uh-huh.
I mean, that was kind of like, man. But
Yeah,
at least,
they all-
never put them in space. Time travel just sounds ridiculous. How can you build like a slasher movie around time travel? Like, that would just, I'm interested to see what that would be.
Just Ghostface goes back to like the 1600s.
Yeah. It just starts killing people in the Civil War. Oh my god.